God never works in the darkness. He always works in the light. But the devil works in darkness, and he wants you to be ashamed. Everywhere the devil's working, he puts shame and fear, because shame and fear causes us to hide. And the devil wants you to hide from God and from other people and to pretend to be something you're not. But God can't help us when we're pretending. Karen and I got saved, and we were 19 years old, and we started going to a Sunday school class. And I really did not like going to Sunday school class, because I was messed up, and even though I was saved, and I just didn't want people to know how messed up I wasn't. In church, you can kind of, hide. But you get in smaller groups, and people find out how messed up you are. So my job in Sunday school class was to keep my mouth shut and act like I knew what I was doing. But I didn't. And so there was a prayer time in this Sunday school class every week. And at the end of the Sunday school class, I'd say, anybody have a prayer request? And so people would say this and that. And so Karen raised her hand, and I looked over at her, and she said, yeah, would y'all pray for us? We only have $170 in the bank, and we're afraid we won't be able to pay our bills. We're broke. I just thought, it's like taking a 3-year-old to the grocery store. They'll say anything. Oh my goodness. And we got in the car. I said, Karen, you don't say that. She said, well, it's the truth. And I said, well, there are a lot of things true you don't say in church. I want people to think we have money. And then about a year later, we were having a big fight, and I was being bad. And so we had this big fight in the morning before I left for work. And I came home ready for round 2. I was not softened at all. I was just ready for round 2. So I walk in the door, and Karen says, I called our Sunday school teachers. We're going to eat dinner with them tonight. I told them all about that fight this morning and what you said to me. I could be such a good fake without her. So we go to dinner that night for 2 hours. The entire conversation centers on moi. They never even looked at Karen. They never said a word to her. It's for 2 hours. Very sweet people. Very sweet people. For 2 hours, the man very kindly said to me that he used to be a jerk like me once. Well, he said it in the nicest way you possibly could. But I'm so thankful that I married an honest woman that wouldn't pretend. James 5 says, pray for one another and confess your faults to one another that you may be healed. Did you know that there's some things that God won't heal in your life until you tell somebody? Don't tell everyone your problems, but tell someone your problems. And don't try to cover it up, because when we try to cover things up, that's the darkness. That's where the devil works. Number 3 type of weakness is defiant weakness. Rather than accepting something in my life as a weakness or something I'm doing below the mark, I declare it acceptable and refuse God's or anyone else's position to the contrary. And this is the Cain spirit. Cain rose up. You remember, there was an offering that was given, and Abel brought the best offering that he could bring, and God regarded it. God honored it when he brought it and blessed him. Cain brought an offering. He just brought some vegetation that he had grown. And so he brought it to the Lord, and the Lord just turned away. He wouldn't regard it. And rather than Cain being humble and repentant to the Lord, Cain got angry. And the Lord turned to him and said, if you do well, you'll be happy. But if you don't do well, sin is crouching at your door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain's response? He killed Abel. You're not going to tell me what to do. It's the Cain spirit. Let me read you. Humanism is kind of the unofficial religion of our day. This is the American Humanist Association. Their subtitle is Good Without a God. They're defiant. The world that we live in today is defiant against God. They have 15 humanist affirmations. Let me read you 3 of them. This is humanism. If you wonder the world today, how people are thinking when they want to legalize abortion till birth or even after birth, and you just see the crazy things that are happening in the world. This is where it comes from. This is the 5th humanist affirmation. This is the American Humanist Association website. Humanism asserts that the nature of the universe depicted by modern science makes unacceptable any supernatural or cosmic guarantees of human values. Religion must formulate its hopes and plans in the light of the scientific spirit and method. In other words, if you can't prove it in a test tube, it's not real. Sixth affirmation. We are convinced that the time has passed for theism, deism, modernism, and the several varieties of new thought. Theism means believing in God based on His Word, based on revelation. Deism means believing in God based on observation and nature. They said that time has passed for that. No more of that. This is the seventh affirmation. Religion consists of those actions, purposes, and experiences which are humanly significant. Nothing human is alien to the religious. It includes labor, art, science, philosophy, love, friendship, recreation, all that it is in its degree expressive of intelligently satisfying human living. The distinction between the sacred and the secular can no longer be maintained. What secular humanists are saying here is there's no difference between an abortion clinic and a maternity ward. The sacred and the secular are secular one. They're redefining religion to say it's anything. We do not believe in the existence of God. One of their other affirmations is the universe is self-existent and was not created. What they're doing is they're cleansing the world. Did you know that that's the fulfillment of Psalm chapter 2? Why do the nations rage and the people devise a vain thing? And they say to the Lord and His anointed, God the Father and God the Son, we're going to tear your cords apart. You're not going to put us in fetters. We're not going to serve you any longer. And it says, He who sits in heaven laughs. This is the world we're living in right now. In revolt against God. You will not, the Cain spirit, you will not tell us what to do. It says, He who sits in heaven laughs. It's like watching a bunch of 2-year-olds plotting to overthrow their parents and take over the house. God sits up in heaven saying, you really think that you're not going to serve me? And here's the most interesting verse in Psalm 2. Kiss the Son, capital S. Kiss the Son while there is time, or He will visit you in His wrath. That's the tribulation. You better kiss the Son. You're not going to overthrow God, but the world that we live in today is a defiant world. Here's the fourth way that people deal with weakness. It's divine weakness. Accepting the fact that there are weaknesses in my life, and some of them are there by God's design. Also choosing to turn my weakness to God and not to be ashamed of them, but rather to allow them to be a means of deepening my dependence upon God and allowing Him to glorify Himself through me. And what happens when you turn your weakness to God? Because He loves you and He knows you're weak. And some of the weaknesses, He's going to change some of them. He's going to leave there so you'll depend on Him. What happens when we turn our weaknesses to God is the breaking of a spirit of the fear of man and rejection. The breaking of a spirit of self-hate and shame. The devil wants us to take our weaknesses and hate ourselves. The breaking of a spirit of performance, the breaking of a spirit of condemnation. and confidence in relating to God and receiving in Him. The two purposes of this message is to, first of all, help us to admit and embrace our inherent weaknesses, and also to help us deal with them properly so they don't become an opportunity for the enemy. I'm a weak man. I'm a very weak man. Pastor Jack Hafer is one of my favorite men, and he says this. He says, regularly when I'm praying, I say to the Lord, I'm just a little child. There's never been a day in my life, a ministry, that I've ever felt like I qualified. Not one day. There's never been one thing that God ever called me to do that I felt adequate for. Never, never. Not this message, not any other message. I know I'm weak, but here's what I also know, that my God is awesome. He is faithful to all generations. The Apostle Paul says, I'm not ashamed of my weaknesses. I'm going to rejoice in my weaknesses and my infirmities. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong. Whenever I allow God to come into my weaknesses, that's when I'm whole. And if someone wants to reject me, for what they see in me or don't see in me, I'm not going to let that control my life. Because people are simply going to criticize me. It's just going to happen. I'm not going to perform for approval. I'm going to obey and walk in the grace of God.